In the crucible of the apocalypse, where gods and monsters clash, and the fate of worlds is forged in battle, there is one who stands above all others, a warrior of unyielding will and immeasurable might. War, the Red Rider, is the living embodiment of strength, honor, and wrath, born of the Nephilim and chosen by the Charred Council as one of the Four Horsemen. War is a force that neither heaven nor hell can bend. His sword, Chaos Eater, cleaves through legions. His fury shakes the very pillars of creation, yet behind the armor and the blade lies a soul bound by duty, haunted by betrayal, and driven by an unbreakable code. I'm Vigil, and this is Video Game Lore. Prepare to witness the legend of war, his power, his burdens, and the storm he brings upon the end of days. Though the full tapestry of war's history remains cloaked in mystery, what is certain is that his name stirs dread in both the celestial hosts of heaven and the infernal legions of hell. Tales of his wrath echo in both realms, and it is whispered that he bears old, bitter scars from many past confrontations. Scars that bind him to the most formidable beings in all creation. Once a proud Nephilim, war rode at Absalom's side as their kin scorched world after world. But as the cost of their crusade mounted, and the balance itself trembled, war made a choice that would forever alter his destiny. Alongside his brothers and sister, he renounced the Nephilim's vendetta and pledged allegiance to the Charred Council, vowing to uphold the balance above all else. Before they could don the full mantle of the Four Horsemen, War and his siblings were cast into the far fields, summoned before a being whose legend was older than time itself, the Horsemaster. The Horsemaster demanded that they relinquish their weapons, for the ancient horses they sought to command would bow only to the indomitable force of will, not to forged steel or brute might. War, ever the challenger, proposed a wager among them. Who would be the first to subdue and tame one of these primordial beasts? Fury and Strife wasted no time mocking War's legendary bravado, their sharp tongues cutting as deep as any blade. But the Horsemaster silenced their bickering with a thunderous rebuke, shaming them for acting like children on the eve of destiny. Without a word, Death, the eldest among the four siblings, strode alone into the stampede. He vanished into the chaos and soon emerged astride a spectral horse, having won the beast's submission through sheer force of being. He rode back to the others and named his mount Despair, for its flesh was now pale and bone, and its eyes burned with the cold fires of death. Not to be outdone, the Red Rider soon tamed his own steed, a hellish brute he would call Ruin. Newly forged as the Council's enforcers, the Four Horsemen were given a command as cruel as it was final: annihilate their own kin. The Nephilim, led by Absalom, had turned their sights on Eden, seeking to claim paradise for themselves. War, with his siblings at his side, rode into the heart of battle. Together, they unleashed a storm of vengeance and power. And when the blood and smoke cleared, the Nephilim were all but extinct, save for the horsemen themselves. But War's spirit was never one to be easily tamed. In a flash of his infamous temper, the Red Rider openly defied the Council. He descended to an unknown world and alone unleashed devastation upon an entire army, their weapons and courage no match for his power. It took the intervention of his siblings to stop him. On that battlefield, War faced all three of his brethren at once. His strength so overwhelming that he managed to subdue Fury in single combat. Death, always the anchor and the mightiest among them, interceded as War's blade, Chaos Eater, came down, taking the blow meant for his sister without even flinching. As Death endured the pain, Fury seized the moment to ensnare both Chaos Eater and War's arm with her whip, trapping him. Calculating and without hesitation, Death then severed War's left arm, still caught with Chaos Eater, and told his younger brother to remember the lesson well. War would later replace the lost limb with an enchanted gauntlet, a constant reminder of that day's folly. Not long after the Nephilim had been slaughtered on Eden, the Charred Council summoned Strife and War to stand before them. The two horsemen, now bound to serve the ancient arbiters, received their next command. They were to stop a scheme devised by Lucifer himself, a plot that threatened to doom all of humankind. Their first lead pointed to Shadow's Edge, a realm ruled by the infamous demon lord Samael, suspected to be Lucifer's conspirator. Strife and War journeyed to the Shadow Dominion, and upon their arrival, found Blackstone Keep beset by a raging demon army. As chaos raged around the fortress, War suggested they exploit the battle as a diversion, searching for a weak point in the defenses that would allow them to slip inside unnoticed. Uncertain, but their instincts pointing to Moloch as the likely mastermind behind the assault, the horsemen pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. Scaling the outer walls of Blackstone Keep, they soon encountered the true source of their destruction, a monstrous abomination known as the Hollow Fiend, which was tearing the fortress asunder. With blades and bullets, war and strife brought the beast down, ending its rampage in a display of brutal efficiency. With the threat dispatched, the duo made their way into Samael's keep, seeking answers. Samael, regal and aloof, greeted them with the characteristic indifference. He informed the horsemen that he would entertain their questions only after he had settled matters with Moloch. Until then, he ordered them to visit his associate, the demon merchant Vulgrim, within the labyrinth of the serpent holes. During their journey, War came across a weapon of unique design, a crossblade by the name of the Vorpal Blade, and took it up, sensing its power. As they journeyed through the twisting serpent holes, Strife explained the paradox of Vulgrim's existence. While he was utterly untrustworthy, to kill him would be to doom themselves, trapping them in the void for all eternity. When they arrived, Vulgrim explained that he had made a pact with Samael, one that involved retrieving a particular artifact, but that he would just as easily strike a deal with the horsemen themselves, the prize for their loyalty, Lucifer's head delivered on a silver platter. Tempted by the promise of bringing the Dark Prince down, War and Strife agreed to Vulgrim's terms. Together, they entered the Slag, a hellish prison dimension of molten stone. There, after shattering the magic locks guarding Vulgrim's treasure, they were confronted by the prison's warden, the Slag Demon. The ensuing battle was short but fierce. The horsemen's combined might quickly overwhelmed the demon, and they seized the treasure for themselves. Returning to Vulgrim, they found that the crystal they had recovered was no ordinary gem. Under Vulgrim's cunning manipulation, it transformed into the demoness named Dis, a fellow merchant and Vulgrim's associate. Dis explained that she had been tasked by Lucifer to recover a powerful relic and was punished for her failure. The item in question was the Ember Core, a magical artifact containing the fire of 1,000 suns, currently locked away in the Hellforge known as the Inferno Vault. If Strife and War could secure the Ember Core before Lucifer, they could disrupt the Dark Prince's machinations. Determined, the horsemen set out for the Inferno Vault. At its gates, they fought through waves of demon forge masters and the labyrinth of smelting machines. Deep inside, they confronted the vault's guardian, the Legion Bolt Spitter. After a hard-fought duel, they claimed the Ember Core, snatching it from the heart of the Infernal Forge. Returning to Vulgrim with their prize, they found the merchant was not yet satisfied. He explained that the Ember Core was only part of a greater device. If they could use the core to power a scrying eye, an artifact capable of peering across all of creation, then they would have the means to spy on Lucifer and any of his conspirators, giving the horsemen the edge they needed to save humanity and unravel the web of hell's schemes. Vulgrim, in all his convincing wisdom, claimed knowledge of only one item that fit the horsemen's need, a relic hidden deep within the frozen labyrinth of Icebind Cavern, sealed away in a temple protected by an army of demon magi. To reach the heart of the sanctum, War and Strife were forced to ignite the ceremonial bonfires that marked the treacherous path leading into the temple's depths. Along the way, they seized the coveted Void Bomb, an artifact the Magi guarded jealously. The theft did not go unanswered. The demon Magi, their pride wounded and their fury awakened, unleashed their most formidable guardian, a fallen, once an angel, then demon, now resurrected as the Molten Hound. This fiery undead beast, an abomination of flame and vengeance, was set upon the horsemen with murderous intent. War and Strife, undaunted, met the creature and its masters in battle, and soon the Molten Hound was slain, its ashes mingling with the dust of its dark summoners. With their foes vanquished, War and Strife completed their task and carried away the scrying eye. When the two horsemen returned to Vulgrim, they arrived just as Samael, weary from his own fierce struggle with Moloch, made his entrance. Vulgrim wasted no time. He combined the scrying eye with the Ember Core, channeling arcane power to attune the device to Lucifer's essence. The ritual revealed the Dark Prince's trail, leading straight to Ammon's lair in the domain known as the Horde. Samael, standing at their side, noted with cold calculation that if Lucifer had forged alliances with Ammon and the other demon masters, then eradicating them would serve not just the balance, but the horsemen's ultimate mission as well. With heavy reluctance, War and Strife embarked from Ammon's realm, determined to confront the greedy demon lord. Their path was fraught with peril. They battled through legions of powerful demons, clashing with two monstrous Legion Bolt Spitters and a towering Legion Siegebreaker, before finally uncovering the truth. Lucifer's reward to Mammon for his allegiance was a cache of priceless artifacts stolen from Eden itself. Yet despite their efforts, Mammon managed to evade capture, leaving the horsemen with nothing but a demonic map and a dagger that Strife recognized, its memory sour and haunting. Returning to Volgrim, the horsemen explained their findings to both him and Samael. Samael, reflecting on the situation, explained the countless artifacts of immense power had been abandoned on Eden. If Lucifer had unlocked a way into this supposedly sealed realm, he now possessed access to a trove of devastating weapons. As Volgrim scrutinized the map for clues, Samael drew War and Strife aside for a private word. Samael, ever the manipulator, acknowledged that while the council had granted the horsemen tremendous power, it came shackled with chains of guilt, remnants of their bloody past. He told them they would need to reach deep within themselves to confront their inner turmoil and draw that power out. With their burdened emotions now laid bare, Samael sent them to hunt Mammon once more, this time with their newly awakened horseman transformations unchained. The vault that awaited them was poorly guarded, and the path led swiftly to Mammon himself. In a desperate bid for survival, the demon hurled his treasures at the horseman, hoping to buy his life with gold. Strife, unmoved, shot the demon, only to realize it was an illusion. The real Mammon emerged, swimming through his mountain of gold, using the wealth to shield himself and launching magical attacks with every artifact at his disposal. War and Strife pressed the assault, fighting through the barrage until they finally brought Mammon down. When questioned, Mammon fused to reveal Lucifer's plan, and Strife, his patience gone, finished the demon with a final shot. Mammon's death yielded little in the way of answers. Samael, undeterred, provided a new lead. Another demon master, Belial the Corrupter, might possess the knowledge they sought. The way to Belial's realm was a maze, but Volgrim claimed to know the route. The foolish arena masters had staked an amulet of immense power as a prize in their arena tournament. Volgrim instructed the horsemen to win the contest and retrieve the talisman so he could use it to pinpoint Belial's domain. War and Strife entered the arena, and after a brief but brutal bloodbath, emerged victorious. Talismans in hand, Volgrim explained that the amulet had once belonged to Belial, and still bore his foul energy, making it a perfect tracker. He admitted, however, that while it would lead them to Belial's realm, only Samael could guide them to the demon's precise location. Samael revealed Belial's realm, and a trio of Dreadwalker guardians had been gifts from Lucifer, in return for a weapon whose purpose remained a mystery even to Samael. The horsemen hunted down the Dreadwalkers with Belial's corrupted realm, discovering that the weapon, known as the Blight Cannon, was drawing its power directly from Eden, poisoning its sacred waters to empower Lucifer's schemes and to feed Belial's gluttony. War and Strife infiltrated Belial's reservoir, fighting their way to the heart of the corruption and destroying the Blight Cannon. Yet Samael's sardonic laughter followed them, reminding them that with the portal to Eden now open, all they had accomplished was to soothe their own guilt. With Samael's mocking words echoing in their ears, War and Strife journeyed to confront Belial himself. The demon, swollen and grotesque from gorging on the polluted waters, fought desperately but was ultimately defeated. Cornered and facing annihilation, Belial vomited up a map room that would guide the horsemen to Eden. Although Samael would have preferred that Belial perish, both he and Volgrim honored their word and opened the path to the still burning remains of Eden for the horsemen. Eden was now a land haunted by nightmares for the horsemen, a place where not only the ghosts of memory lingered, but new horrors rose to challenge them at every turn. Among these was Astarte, a once angelic centaur who had abandoned her heavenly calling to consort with the darkness. Through her mastery of necromancy, she had assembled an army of undead Nephilim and twisted fallen angels, now fighting in Lucifer's service in return for her own freedom from Eden's tomb-like grasp. War and Strife unleashed their full wrath upon Astarte's monstrous legion, cutting down the abominations she had raised for her amusement. They shattered the undead host, and in a final act of retribution, broke the angel's body, determined to drag her before the council to answer for her unforgivable crimes. Yet even in defeat, Astarte's venomous tongue did not fall silent. She spat accusations at the brothers, calling them traitors of their own blood, and hinting darkly at secrets from Strife's past, each word an attempt to drive a wedge between them. War, the embodiment of fury, could bear no more. In an eruption of rage, he silenced Astarte's hypocrisy forever, his sword ending her life and poisonous words in a single, brutal stroke. The deed done, the brothers stood alone among the carnage, the weight of their choices hanging heavy in the air. But after a moment of quiet reflection, War and Strife reaffirmed their bond, choosing trust and unity over the bitterness of regret. With their resolve restored, they pressed onward, determined to sever the path to Eden and contain the corruption once and for all. To accomplish this, the horsemen sought the counsel of their demon allies. Fulgrim, ever the traitor in secrets, explained that only an angelic artifact of immense power could seal Eden away. Samael, with his vast knowledge of forbidden relics, told them that such artifacts could be found among the tombstones scattered throughout Eden's sacred grounds. Returning to Eden, War and Strife encountered Abaddon, the once mighty archangel, who confessed that Lucifer had overwhelmed his armies with sheer force. Corruption had seeped into Abaddon's men, turning them into monstrous shadows of their former selves. While searching for the right artifact, the horsemen stumbled upon a living Nephilim, an impossible find among the dead. The Nephilim, mortally wounded, uttered a final cryptic warning about her mother before succumbing to her wounds. The horsemen then brought their findings back to their demonic contacts, but troubling news awaited them. Lucifer had already completed whatever business drew him to Eden and had gifted the realm to another, a demon lord named Dagon, whose ambition was to consume Eden's waters and use their power to flood the world, establishing a new kingdom atop his drowned ruins. To stop Dagon's schemes, War and Strife set their sights on the demon Stormcaller, the agent who would begin the deluge. Battling through Dagon's shamans, they shattered the barrier protecting the Stormcaller, clearing the way for the final confrontation. With the magical bulwark gone, the horsemen faced the Stormcaller in a maelstrom of elemental fury, and in a titanic clash, they finally defeated the beast. The horsemen then turned their sights on Dagon, who was not finished with the realm. After a brutal battle, Dagon was defeated, and his dying breath used his tentacles to drag both the horsemen beneath the waves. When at last they surfaced, exhausted and reeking, they exchanged wry laughter at the forced cleansing. The ordeal far from over, the foul-smelling horsemen returned to Samael, who awaited them with new orders. The time had come to confront the last of Lucifer's generals, Moloch. Yet through Lucifer's dark machinations, Moloch had become nigh invincible, his body shielded by a blood mantle that granted him supernatural regeneration. To overcome this, War and Strife infiltrated Moloch's mining camp, seeking out the foreman, a legion shield-bearer, and a traitor who had once served Samael. With the foreman slain and Moloch's army thrown into chaos, the horsemen set their sights on the source of Moloch's strength, the blood mantle, hidden within the armory of Samael's own fortress, Blackstone Keep. With cunning and stealth, they slipped through the secret passage, hunting their way into the heart of Blackstone, and at last destroyed the blood mantle, stripping Moloch of his invulnerability. Now that Moloch's unnatural invulnerability had been stripped away, the horsemen became predators on the hunt. War and Strife tracked the demon lord to his final stronghold, and as their blades and guns carved a path through his last defenders, Samael himself arrived, choosing to observe the battle from a distance, his gaze inscrutable and ever calculating. Together, the two horsemen unleashed their fury upon Moloch, clashing with the demonic conqueror in a battle that shook the very foundations of hell. Blow after blow rained down, and at last, Moloch was thrown down. His immense form sprawled in defeat upon the blood-soaked earth. Yet as Samael approached to deliver the coup de grace, Moloch's lips curled into a final mocking grin. With his dying breath, he taunted the victors. Lucifer's design had already reached completion, and their victory, he claimed, was hollow. The revelation sent a chill through the horsemen. They turned on Samael, demanding he reveal everything they knew about Lucifer's true intentions. Samael, his voice edged with grim satisfaction, explained the dark truth. Lucifer's ultimate aim was the creation of the Animus. This was no mere weapon, but a living embodiment of cosmic greed and hatred, forged from the souls of the fallen demon masters, each one harvested at death, and each one fueling this monstrous entity. The Animus was conceived as vengeance, a scourge to punish what Lucifer saw as humanity's complicity in the Nephilim's extinction. Its purpose was singular and terrible, to corrupt the hearts of humankind, infecting them with the worst aspects of angels, demons, and Nephilim alike, until their very essence was twisted beyond recognition. When War and Strife arrived on Earth, hoping to save what remained of humanity, they discovered that Lucifer's animus had already taken root. The corruption was too deep, the souls of men too far gone. There was no salvation to be found, only the grim task of putting down those who had been transformed into monsters by Lucifer's malice. With heavy hearts, the horsemen culled the infected, sparing those who could still be saved from damnation. Returning to the charred council, the horsemen were not met with condemnation, but with praise. The council congratulated War and Strife on their grim work, but made it clear that no further interference with humanity would be tolerated. The age of mortal intervention had come to an end. In response, the council enacted a new decree. Earth would be severed from the other realms, sealed away, untouchable by angel, demon, or horsemen alike. To ensure this new order, a pact was forged, its power anchored by 7 seals. With these seals, the council locked away the armies of heaven, the legions of hell, and even the true might of the horsemen themselves, vowing that full power would only be restored when the day came that humanity could stand tall and equal among the first and second kingdoms. Not long after, War joined his siblings to deliver a message to the demon prince Samael. It was the youngest horseman who stepped forward, warning Samael not to breach the fragile peace between heaven and hell. Samael, ever the schemer, suggested that they take their warning to the Dark One instead. But War was relentless, insisting that the time of the Dark One was nearly over and that Samael himself was next in line for the reckoning. War, sharp-eyed, noted that Lilith's presence in the realm signaled that Samael was counting the hours until the balance shifted. The Mad Queen, stung by his insolence, snapped that the real warning should be delivered to Abaddon, the angel who clamored for war most loudly. As the horsemen turned to leave, a host of demons sought to bar their way, but Samael himself commanded his minions to stand down, granting horsemen safe passage for now. After the creation of the 7 seals and the sealing away of Earth, War's service to the Charred Council was far from over. The Council, ever vigilant against threats to the balance, commanded War to ascend to the heights of heaven itself and destroy a weapon forged by angelic hands. A device known as the Sacrament Bomb, engineered by Abaddon with one singular purpose: to annihilate only demons. War, wielding his title as the Councilor's enforcer, gained entry to the White City under the guise of peaceful intentions. Yet, beneath his calm words, his mission was one of ruthless violence. Within the gleaming city of angels, War stalked the pristine halls until he reached the building where the weapon was hidden. Without hesitation, he seized a massive statue and hurled it with unstoppable force, using it as a battering ram to shatter the entrance and herald his arrival. Once inside, War moved through the edifice with relentless purpose, blasting through each floor in turn. He wielded a redemption cannon, seized from a fallen angel, as both weapon and tool, firing upon the very structure itself and using spent ammo clips as makeshift bombs. Every corridor and chamber became a battlefield. Angels fell before his onslaught, their defenses nothing against the horseman's wrath. In the chamber of the Sacrament Bomb, War confronted the last guardian, Uriel, barely out of adolescence but burning with resolve. War, both amused by her youthful bravado and impressed by her courage, struck her with the flat of his blade, knocking her unconscious. As she crumpled at his feet, he offered only a dry remark. She should seek him out again when she was truly worthy of the challenge. War returned from the White City, his mission complete, only to be summoned before the council along with his siblings. There, death revealed the grim origins of the grand abominations, ancient weapons of unimaginable power, created from the living flesh of the Ravalim, the first world ever destroyed by the Nephilim in their rampage under Absalom's command. The Charred Council, recognizing the threat that such power posed, tasked all 4 horsemen with halting any who sought to breach the abomination vault. But as soon as they left the council's chamber, Death insisted that only he would confront this doom, ordering War, Fury, and Strife to remain behind. War, Fury, and Strife bristled at being sidelined. Strife even drew his gun on Death, but the eldest was unmoved by the threats or pleas. Fury, after a moment's struggle, chose to honor Death's command. Strife, his pride wounded by Death's rebuke, sulked in silence. But War, true to his nature, resolved to follow Death regardless of his brother's wishes, his loyalty unshaken, his purpose clear. War made his way to the radiant gates of the White City, knowing full well that Death intended to investigate the rogue maker, Belisatra. Entering the realm of the fabled Argent Spire, War realized his brother had yet to appear and strode through the city's gleaming avenues, searching for him among the angels' domain. It wasn't long before War found Death locked in a deadly confrontation. An angelic assassin, wielding a Nephilim blade known as Affliction, was locked in combat with the eldest horseman. Without hesitation, War charged into the fray, disrupting the assassin before he could inflict any further harm. Faced with the prospect of battling 2 horsemen at once, the angel fled into the shadows, unwilling to risk annihilation. Yet War's entrance into the White City had not gone unnoticed. His reputation, especially after the violence of his last visit, had preceded him. Before long, a force of angels tracked down the 2 brothers. Among them was Uriel, and leading them in grim authority was Abaddon himself. The moment teetered on the edge of violence. A tense standoff ensued, but Death, cold and commanding, threatened the wrath of the Charred Council should they be attacked. Abaddon, forced to weigh his options, relented, allowing the horsemen to proceed, though it was clear the angels did so grudgingly. The two horsemen pressed on toward the Argent Spire. As they walked, Death scolded War for his lack of discretion and for disobeying his order to stay behind, while War, ever restless, chafed at his brother's rebukes. At the spire, the Archangel Azrael awaited them. He dispatched his scribes to scour the vast archives for any mentions on Belisatra. While they worked, War paced with impatience, while Death carefully recounted a version of the abomination's history, leaving out the darkest details to the Angel of Death. In time, Azrael returned with all that was known of the robe maker. Belisatra had once apprenticed under Gulbanan, a maker of near mythic renown. Gulbanan, it was revealed, had been murdered long ago, yet before his death, he had fallen from grace after taking the demon Lilith as a lover. The horsemen quickly surmised that Lilith was the key to finding Belisatra, and so set out for her lair. Upon arriving in the demon's domain, Death insisted that War remain in the outer halls while he confronted Lilith alone. War argued bitterly, refusing to be sidelined, but Death would not be moved. Inside, Death coerced the truth from Lilith. It was Belisatra, not Lilith, who had slain Gulbanan, murdering him when he repented and threatened to expose all he had taught Lilith to the Makers. Belisatra had long been Lilith's servant, but had recently broken away to join forces with the angel Hadramon. The horsemen deduced that Hadramon must have been the same assassin who attacked Death in the White City. Lilith, compelled by Death's threats, revealed the location of a hidden laboratory she once used in Gulbanan's domain. The horsemen soon reached the secret laboratory. Death attempted to breach the hidden stone door with a conjured storm of bones, but the spell, meant to flay flesh from bone, was insufficient against solid rock. Or, ever direct, charged ruin and drove the steed into the door with all his strength, blasting it open through force alone. Inside the ancient lab, Hadramon and Belisatra awaited them, having been alerted by Ward's thunderous entrance. A battle erupted, but before a victor could be decided, a host of demonic mercenaries stormed the chamber, throwing the conflict into chaos. War and Death dealt with the demons swiftly, but in the confusion, Hadramon and Belisatra slipped away. Scouring the laboratory, the horsemen made a grim discovery. Their foes had recovered one of the grand abominations, and Death found another, an all but dead abomination called Mortis. When Death donned the shield, its telepathic essence pried into his mind, extracting from him the knowledge needed to awaken the abominations and relaying it to Hadramon. The horsemen realized the grand abominations required the blood of the Rovaline to be fully awakened, and so Death led War to the Rovaline's homeworld, the site of the greatest slaughter. Upon setting foot on the Rovaline's world, War confronted Death, demanding to know the true reason for his brother's guilt over the abominations. Death, pressed, confessed that as one of the firstborns, he was not only present at their creation, but the original idea had been his. War, repulsed by the revelation, nevertheless resolved to stand by Death and help destroy the threat posed by Hadramon and Belisatra. Soon after, the horsemen encountered an angelic force led by Azrael. The Archangel offered his aid in eliminating the threat, though some among his hosts were visibly displeased at the thought of fighting alongside War. As the conversation turned to Hadramon, Azrael explained that he was an outcast. Once a member of the White City, he had turned against heaven after his lover, Raciel, was banished to hell for their forbidden romance, a sentence Hadramon himself had delivered. The forces of the Nephilim and the gathered legions of angels advanced side by side until they encountered Belisatra's army of tireless constructs. Without hesitation, they attacked the mechanical horde, the two sides clashing in a battle of thunder and steel. For a time, the alliance of horsemen and angels held the upper hand, scattering the constructs before them. But victory was not to come so easily. Suddenly, the demon mercenaries, ever an unpredictable force, struck the battlefield once more, throwing chaos into the fray. War, ever the vanguard, found himself face to face with the Knights of Perdition, a cadre of demon riders, Hell's own attempt to match the fury of the Four Horsemen. Though these adversaries were but pale imitations, War showed no mercy, cutting them down with the full force of his wrath. His rampage against the demon army was nothing short of legendary, bodies falling in his wake as his power carved a path through the chaos. Yet, as the tide began to turn in their favor, Belisatra and Hadramon emerged from the shadows, wielding weapons of ancient terror. Belisatra bore Earth Reaver, a grand abomination capable of channeling the planet's magma flows into a cataclysmic eruption. Hadramon, for his part, brandished Black Mercy, a weapon so cursed that any wound it inflicted, or even the mere presence of its aura, was inevitably fatal. The sight of these abominations sent a chill through the assembled warriors. The demons, sensing the scale of destruction to come, withdrew from the field, leaving the horsemen and angels to face the full fury of the grand abominations. Realizing they could not win, the allies retreated, though Death managed to cripple Earthreaver, buying them precious time. In the aftermath, Death revealed his daring plan to war in the angelic host. He would wield his necromantic arts to gather all the Raveline blood, now soaked into the soil, compressing it into a single cylinder with Azrael's aid. The angels would be sent away carrying a decoy cylinder, while Death himself would remain in a cave with another decoy. War, along with a select group of angels, would carry the true cylinder to the Charred Council, or so he was led to believe. In truth, Death, ever the strategist, had leaked this plan to Hadramon through the telepathic powers of Mortis, ensuring that the angel would target War. Unbeknownst to his brother, War was actually transporting a false cylinder, while Death secretly guarded the real Raveline blood. Hadramon, falling into Death's trap, ambushed War's party with Black Mercy. The battle was devastating. Hadramon's weapon killed War, striking him down and seemingly ending the horseman's journey. After ensuring the destruction of the Raveline blood, Death returned to the ravaged world and began the grim task of searching for his fallen brother. For days, he scoured the ashen fields until at last he found War's broken form. Determined to restore his brother, Death enacted a desperate ritual. He impaled himself upon Chaos Eater, letting the pain and violence feed the spark of War's soul bound within the blade. Drawing upon his necromantic mastery, Death called War's spirit back from the void, reuniting it with War's body and life force. War was resurrected, alive but weighed down by shame, believing he had failed to protect what he thought was the real Raveline blood. Unable to bear the truth, Death lied to War, claiming he had reclaimed the blood from Hadramon and destroyed it, sparing his brother from the burden of guilt. Together, they returned to the realm of the Charred Council. Yet their ordeal was not over. The Council, grim-faced and unyielding, revealed that Hadramon and Belisatra had attacked the angelic outpost, using the Maker's construct army and the dread Black Mercy to sow terror. The Council demanded Death surrender the location of the Abomination Vault, declaring that they could no longer trust him alone with its protection. Death refused, and the Council responded with punishment, engulfing him in a fiery agony that left the eldest horseman paralyzed. The Council declared that Death's defiance had rendered him expendable and threatened to end him. But War intervened, stepping forward in defiance of the Council's wrath. He declared that if they killed Death, they would have to kill him as well, for 2 horsemen would be lost in a single act. Reluctantly, the Council yielded. They charged War and Death with the duty of guarding the Abomination Vault, assigning Fury and Strife to hunt down Hadramon and Belisatra. Outside the Council's hall, War vented his frustration at being reduced to the role of mere sentry. Death, ever the thinker, explained his theory. Hadramon and Belisatra had managed to awaken Black Mercy, not with Raveline blood from the earth, but by cannibalizing Earthreaver, which was itself made from Raveline flesh and bone. The blood within the abominations had been enough to fuel Black Mercy, and the attack on the outpost was merely a test. Death also revealed that Hadramon now knew the vault's location, and so the angel would come to them. On the dead ashen world that Death called home, the same barren land that housed the Abomination Vault, the horsemen prepared for an inevitable siege. When Belisatra's constructs attacked, Death's wards and traps whittled down their numbers before the real battle began. War and Death fought side by side, demolishing the enemy's ranks, but when Hadramon appeared wielding Black Mercy, they were forced to fall back. At that moment, the mercenary demons under Raciel, now transformed into a lost angel and summoned by Azrael in disguise at Death's request, entered the fray, turning the battle into a 3-sided war. Hadramon, stunned to see Raciel, was manipulated by her into an uneasy alliance, his rationality slipping further away. War, caught outside, fought the remaining demons, constructs, and faced Belisatra herself, now brandishing a massive cannon of her own creation. Meanwhile, Death pursued Hadramon to the very seal of the Abomination Vault. Azrael, revealing his true identity, arrived just in time to deliver a critical blow to Raciel, forcing her to flee into the structure with Hadramon, with Azrael close behind. Inside the vault's sanctum, Hadramon, now fully enthralled by Black Mercy's madness, killed Raciel. Azrael and Death, using cunning and deception, then struck down Hadramon, finally ending the threat. Emerging from the vault with Black Mercy in hand, Death found Belisatra ready to surrender. War and Azrael both expressed their distaste for the trickery that had won the day, but Death dismissed their qualms as foolishness, valuing victory above all else. Azrael warned Death not to seek aid from the White City anytime soon, and departed. Death informed War that he could return Black Mercy to the Abomination Vault and restore its seal. With the battle's carnage laid bare, Death asked War to help clear the field, but War, with a rare laugh, told his brother that while he followed Death into any danger, the cleanup was his alone. A millennium passed, when the kingdom of Hell at last surged forth to assault the earth. Their legions of demons swept across the land in an orgy of destruction. In answer, Heaven's host descended its angels arrayed for battle against their eternal foes. Amidst the chaos, as the kingdom of man swiftly crumbled before the demonic onslaught, a blazing meteor tore through the sky and crashed into the heart of the besieged city. When the smoke and flame faded, War rose from the crater, Chaos Eater in hand, a living omen of the apocalypse. War wasted no time. He cleaved his way through everything in his path, angel and demon alike, the battlefield a storm of violence wherever he strode. Yet as he pressed deeper into the city, War felt his power inexplicably draining away, his strength ebbing with each clash. Confusion gnawed at him, something was terribly wrong, but the cause remained hidden. At that very moment, a watcher burst into the charred council's hall, her voice frantic as she delivered dire news. She reported that Abaddon and his Hell Guard had marched against the demon lords in a desperate bid for victory, and that War himself had entered the fray. The council, impatient and suspicious, demanded to know if she had verified the 7 seals were still intact. The watcher affirmed she had, but the council dismissed her concern and her usefulness. In a pitiless display, they tore her apart, her body left broken at their feet. As her remains cooled, a second watcher appeared. Mourning the loss of his sister, he turned to the council, inquiring what task they would set for him in her place. The council answered with grave urgency, explaining that the end war had begun on Earth and that he must leave at once to find War. Back on Earth, War battled a monstrous trauma demon, dispatching it with ruthless efficiency as the Watcher, now shadowing him, looked on in amusement, declaring that this would be fun. As War pressed forward, a fissure cracked open in the earth, and a phalanx of angels surrounded a massive stone warden, attacking War without hesitation. War made short work of them, and watched as the stone giant lumbered through the city, inadvertently forging a path for the horsemen. Yet with every step, War felt his power diminishing, a slow and relentless drain that left him weakened. Meteors rained down, transforming the city into a true hellscape. War fought on, slaying demon after demon and angel after angel, until he reached a hellish pit of lava where angels and demons waged war around its rim. Abaddon himself stood on the edge, leading the Hell Guard in a desperate defense against the demonic tide. Angels fell in droves, and amidst the carnage, War advanced. Abaddon, stunned, cried out in disbelief at War's presence. War, equally shocked, shouted the Archangel's name. "Where are my brothers?" he demanded. Abaddon's eyes widened in horror as he tried to speak. The final seal, but before he could finish, a gigantic demon lunged, biting Abaddon savagely. Uriel, seeing her commander falter, swooped in and struck the demon, knocking it into the molten abyss. Abaddon, in agony, wondered aloud what was wrong. War, feeling his power ebbing further, stood helpless as Abaddon said the 7th seal was not broken. Then, from the pit, the colossal demon Straga rose, seizing Abaddon in his grip and crushing the Archangel to death. Uriel turned on War, demanding to know what he had done. War, grim and unflinching, replied, "I answered the call." Straga, now fully emerged, slaughtered the remaining angels, while War readied himself for battle. Leaping onto Straga's face, War drove his blade into the demon's eye, but before he could finish him off, his strength failed him once more, and he was knocked aside. Straga, seizing the moment, disarmed War, and as War staggered to his feet, the horseman declared the law was not broken. Straga laughed, grasped War in his massive hands, and crushed the horseman to death. After the battle, the council accused War of starting the end war before its appointed hour, and in aiding the armies of Hell in their conquest of Earth. As punishment, they stripped War of all power, his sword, his Mount Ruin, even his very essence, and pronounced him ready for judgment. A decade later, bound in chains, War was summoned before the council. Forced to listen to his sister Fury, ever sharp-tongued, marked his disgrace and questioned what had brought him so low. The council condemned War for breaking the final seal, and announced that his actions had caused someone to unleash the 7 deadly sins upon the desecrated Third Kingdom. Fury was commanded to hunt down and recapture the sins, a task she accepted eagerly, but only after extracting a promise that she would be made leader of the Horsemen should she succeed. The council, none too pleased, accepted her demand and assigned her a watcher of her own. War tried to warn Fury. He spoke of his innocence, of the strange forces at work, of a greater conspiracy moving unseen, but his words fell on deaf ears as Fury departed for Earth, determined to fulfill her quest. After his sister's departure, the council turned its attention back on War. His sentence was death, his soul cast into the abyss, where he would remain imprisoned for 90 years. As the horseman's spirit passed through the land of the dead, his agonized screams echoed across the underworld, heard even by the Lord of Bones himself. 90 years passed by in War's absence. When the charred council finally resurrected him, the air in the chamber was thick with accusation and ancient law. Without preamble, the council reminded War of the sacred edict. When the final seal was shattered, the Four Horsemen would descend to Earth to meet judgment upon all, angel, demon, and mortal alike. Their verdict would forge a new pact, the balance reset through blood and fire. But there was no mercy in the council's words. They scolded War for answering a summons that was never truly sent, for being found locked in battle beneath the destroyer's banner. War's voice thundered in protest, declaring he had been called by the breaking of the 7 seals. But the council pressed him further, demanding to know why the other horsemen had not appeared, and insisting that the seals remained unbroken. They accused War of dooming all of mankind, pressing him to deny their charges. War answered them with stoic resolve. When he arrived, the end war was already raging, and when he saw Abaddon, the archangel seemed to sense something was terribly amiss. The council, cold and unyielding, told War that Abaddon's death was his doing. War countered that he fought the battle stripped of his powers, incredulous that the council could even doubt him. But the council dismissed his defense, arguing it proved nothing, suggesting instead the demon lord had discarded him once he was no longer useful, and that War had clearly defied the balance. War, defiant as ever, declared that he had always served the council and the balance, demanding to be sent back so he could mete out true punishment to all those responsible. The council, unmoved, warned War that he was powerless against the destroyer and his legions. War replied with iron resolve that if death was to be his fate, so be it. At least the demons would have finished the council's sentence. The council, finding War's determination satisfactory, agreed to his terms. They bade him step forward, warning he would be watched closely. War thrust his hand into molten lava. From the inferno emerged a watcher, the same sinister spirit that had shadowed him a century before when the apocalypse began. The council told War that this watcher would ensure his loyalty, and the watcher, laughing wickedly, told War to remember it well or suffer the consequences. The watcher then vanished into War's prosthetic arm, pain-racking War's body, and the bond was sealed. The council commanded War to arm himself, summoning his mighty sword Chaos Eater from the void. As War gripped his blade, the council explained that he would need to use souls as currency and that he should seek out Vulgrim, the demon merchant. War questioned why they now dealt with such creatures, but the council explained that Vulgrim had fallen from the destroyer's favor and had been seeking an audience with them. War, seeking clarity, asked how long he had been gone, but before he could receive an answer, the council cast him down to earth. Moments later, War crashed through a ruined skyscraper, flames swirling as he landed upon the shattered world. Gathering himself, he was greeted by the Watcher, who remarked that their arrival was a little off course. As War attempted to set off on his quest, the Watcher halted him, reminding War that he was now a dog on a leash, and that if War bit, the Watcher would not hesitate to kick him. War, his expression unchanging, moved forward, prompting the Watcher to mockingly call him a good boy. War traversed the ruins of the city, the corpses of humanity strewn like broken dolls. But death on this world was never final. Their bodies began to shamble and rise, forcing War to battle the relentless dead and the demonic fiends that prowled the wasteland. He reached the crossroads and gazed up at a colossal tower that soared above the city's remains. War, still uncertain of the passage of time, asked the Watcher how long they had been gone. The Watcher replied that it had been close to a century, long enough for the last embers of humanity to be snuffed out. War mourned the loss of the Third Kingdom as the world crumbled around him, the husks of the dead wandering through the collapsing ruins. As War plunged from a rooftop onto the concrete below, the impact reverberated through the city. Vulgrim, ever the opportunist, materialized, feigning surprise at War's arrival. Vulgrim demanded to know if War had brought the souls he'd requested, warning that their meeting would be short without payment. War obliged, feeding Vulgrim the souls, who devoured them hungrily, savoring the taste of the young ones among them. Vulgrim told War that if he wished to know the source of the Destroyer's power, he would have to seek it within the tower. As War moved to leave, Vulgrim cautioned him that he no longer possessed his former strength and was in no condition to challenge the Destroyer. Vulgrim explained that demon magics now sealed the path to the tower, and while he did not know the way, he hinted that others might. War asked who held this knowledge, and Vulgrim, sly as ever, replied that if War fed his hunger, he would feed War's curiosity. After War gathered enough souls and offered them to Vulgrim, the demon led him to a stone gate, explaining that the gate possessed a will of its own. Vulgrim handed War the Earth Caller, a mystic horn, suggesting that its power might awaken the gate. He instructed War that once inside, he should seek out Samael's prison, and warned that Samael had once rivaled Lucifer in might and was no friend of the Destroyer. Vulgrim slipped back into the serpent holes, urging War to continue feeding him souls to make their dealings worthwhile. War approached the ancient gate and sounded the Earth Caller. The blast rumbled through the ruins, stirring the stone warden from his ageless slumber. The warden, awakening from what he called a dreamless sleep, asked if he was now free. War replied that freedom would not come with the Destroyer's death. The warden admitted that while he was bound to the demon in this war, he still counted the Destroyer as an enemy, and thus, War as his friend. Before departing, the warden asked War to bring liberation to the rest of his kin, hinting at the unfinished business that still awaited the horsemen. War pressed on, approaching the prison where Samael, the Blood Prince, was held captive. At the threshold stood a lone demon who eyed War warily and asked if he knew what manner of terror was imprisoned within those walls, warning that even a horseman should fear what lay inside. The demon, in a show of bravado, challenged War, mocking him and warning him that the Destroyer had already set his plan into motion. War, never one to be cowed, simply promised to make the coming battle quick. After dispatching the demon and cutting down his minions, War unlocked Samael's prison, working the mechanisms with the blood of the fallen and aligning the locks until the massive gate groaned open. From the darkness erupted a roar, and Samael emerged, his presence as suffocating as ever. The demon lord immediately demanded to know if War had come to kill him, insinuating that the council should have sent all 4 horsemen for such a task. War replied that Samael was not his target, prompting Samael to remark that the Destroyer was out of reach for both of them now. War, his voice edged with challenge, asked if Samael had become a coward, prompting the demon to unleash a thunderous scream in his face. Regaining his composure, Samael explained that War would need to get inside the tower, but to do so, he would have to slay 4 of the Destroyer's chosen. Samael demanded that War bring him the hearts of these chosen, forbidding any questions about his motives, making it clear that his reasons for helping War were his own. War inquired as to where he should begin. Samael instructed him to seek out the Twilight Cathedral, where the first chosen, Tiamat, the Bat Queen. Samael warned that War could not reach her in his current state, and restored to him the power of shadow flight, the ability to soar above the battlefield. He told War to use the high ground to hunt Tiamat, and to return with her still beating heart. Setting out for the choking grounds, War encountered another stone warden, dormant and bound. War blew the Earth Caller, awakening the ancient guardian and announcing his quest for the Destroyer. The warden recognized War's name, explaining that his brother had spoken of the Red Rider, but lamented that he was held in place by a powerful curse. War, defiant, said that curses could be broken. The warden agreed, but explained that the curse was the work of beings that moved through the Shadow Realm, their blood the key to breaking the bonds. Only by destroying these shadow creatures could War set the warden free. War confessed he could not traverse the Shadow Realm in his current state, so the warden bestowed upon him the temporary ability to do so. War ventured into the shadow, hunting down the creatures that held the warden captive. Upon destroying them and breaking the curse, the warden thanked War for his aid and departed. War continued onward, eventually making his way through an area known as the Broken Stair. There, as he approached the edge of the vast chasm, he saw angels patrolling the ruins, searching for any sign of their enemy. While War hid out of sight, the angels debated whether they'd actually seen anything. Uriel descended from the heavens, agreeing with the guard's assessment. She said she could sense something ancient lurking beneath the stench. War's gaze followed an ortho, a flying beast, soaring nearby. Uriel remarked that it was neither angel nor demon, but something in between. Seizing the opportunity, War leaped from the building, taking out an angel on the way down, and landed on top the ortho's back, taking flight toward the Twilight Cathedral. Uriel, recognizing the threat, commanded the Hell Guard to bring him down. Fighting his way through a gauntlet of angels and Tiamat's monstrous spawn, War finally arrived at the gates of the cathedral. The Bat Queen wasted no time, attacking the ortho and knocking War from its back. As the ortho and Tiamat battled above, the Watcher quipped that Tiamat didn't seem to appreciate visitors. Entering the cathedral, War descended to the lower levels, where he confronted the monstrous jailer and crushed him with overwhelming force. Along the way, War recovered the Vorpal Blade and the final sword necessary to activate the cathedral's elevator. Riding it to the summit, War was greeted by Tiamat herself, who sneered, asking if the council had reduced the mighty horsemen to mere assassins. Descending from her perch, the Bat Queen questioned War's loyalty, asking if he was now Samael's lackey, and slyly asking that perhaps she could buy his allegiance. War, unimpressed, warned that she would not like his terms. Tiamat, undeterred, launched herself into the air, threatening War with regret for challenging her. A brutal battle ensued, each combatant unleashing their full fury. War battled the Bat Queen, dodging her attacks, and eventually seized the upper hand. Leaping onto her back, he tore her wings from her body, bringing her crashing to the ground. Landing atop her, he raised his gauntlet as the Watcher urged him to finish the job. Tiamat, her pride unbroken, offered to grant War any wish, claiming she could fulfill his every desire as one of the chosen. War, cold as iron, demanded if she could restore the balance. When Tiamat laughed at the notion, War ended her laughter forever by tearing out her heart. As War held the pulsing heart in his hand, the Watcher was awestruck by the power emanating from it, and asked if War truly believed Samael would honor his end of the bargain. Leaving the cathedral, War reached the end of the chasm where Vulgrim appeared, dripping with sarcasm, and asked how War planned to leave. War replied that he would find a way. Vulgrim suggested he could use the serpent holes to travel, if War was willing to pay the price. War demanded to know Vulgrim's terms, only for the demon to explain that he had sensed the power of the Chosen's heart as soon as War left the cathedral. War, suspicious, recoiled, but Vulgrim claimed he only wanted to look at it. War, wary, allowed Vulgrim the glimpse, but jerked away when the demon reached for it, drawing a brief flash of anger from Vulgrim before he composed himself. Vulgrim assured War that Samael would be pleased, and granted War free use of the serpent hole. War took the offer and traveled through the portal, returning to Samael with the heart of Tiamat. Upon returning to the Demon Lord's domain, War presented the still-beating heart to Samael. Samael, a predatory gleam in his eyes, inquired whether War had made Tiamat suffer in her final moments. The Watcher, ever sardonic, replied that it hadn't been nearly enough. With a swift motion, War surrendered the heart to Samael, who snatched it greedily and wasted no time revealing the next trial. The Griever, second of the Destroyer's chosen, awaited in the shadowy depths of the subway tunnels. But Samael warned that a formidable obstacle stood in War's path. Ulthane, one of the legendary Old Ones, a maker whose name echoed even among the horsemen. War challenged Samael, asking him why he had not mentioned it before. The Watcher pressed further, questioning if the terms of the agreement were shifting. Samael, his patience spent, struck the Watcher aside, stating coldly that his conversation was with War alone. The Demon Lord explained that while Ulthane despised the Destroyer, the only path to the Griever led straight through the Maker's domain. Samael taunted War, claiming he lacked the strength to defeat the Black Hammer. Without warning, Samael unleashed his magic, binding the Watcher in place as it shrieked in protest, demanding to know what was happening. Samael twisted the Watcher's essence, explaining to War that this creature's true purpose was to stifle War's power and keep him shackled to the Council's will. Samael urged War to rid himself of the leech, telling him a true horseman, the rider of the Red Horse, was no puppet. Seized by rage, War crushed the Watcher, breaking the Council's limiter and reclaiming the full fury of his chaos form. Samael, triumphant, celebrated War's rebirth. Exulting as War's power surged, the Watcher, slowly reforming, asked what had transpired. Samael replied that although War was battered, there remained a sleeping power within him, a potential Samael glimpsed, a force capable of challenging the Destroyer and his hellish armies. With his newfound strength, War set off for the Drowned Pass. There, another stone warden blocked his path. War sounded the Earth Caller, awakening the ancient sentinel, who explained that he too was bound by a curse, just like his kin. War declared that curses could be broken, and the warden agreed, explaining that shadowy beings held him captive, their blood tied to his bonds. The warden granted War the ability to see into the shadow realm once again. War hunted down the shadow creatures, shattering their hold and returning to free the warden, who voiced his gratitude before moving on, hopeful that true freedom would soon be theirs. Continuing his journey, War arrived at Anvil's Ford, where a solitary hammer sat in the courtyard. As War reached for it, the Watcher, irritation in his voice, demanded to know why War was wasting time. Suddenly, a booming voice rang out. Ulthane, mighty maker and the Black Hammer himself, warned War to keep his hands to himself or risk never using them again, punctuating his threat by kicking a car aside as though it were a pebble. War addressed Ulthane by name. The Maker retorted that while War might know of Ulthane, the feeling was not mutual, and he had no love for uninvited strangers. Ulthane asserted that who he was didn't matter nearly as much as what brought War to his domain. War, ever direct, replied that he had come for the Black Hammer. Ulthane laughed, telling War that he was welcome to try. War called out Ulthane, declaring him to be the Black Hammer. Ulthane cracked his neck, inviting War to give it his best shot, warning that he was far tougher to fight than any weapon. The two giants clashed, War forced to unleash his chaos form just to injure the Maker, who smiled broadly, declaring that no one had tagged him in a millennium. As they prepared to charge each other again, their duel was interrupted by the arrival of Uriel and her Hellguard. Uriel declared that she had prayed for this encounter for 100 years, stating that she would see War tried in the White City. However, until the Destroyer was defeated, the angels were barred from heaven, and she had grown tired of waiting for justice. Uriel claimed War's life as her own, but War knocked her aside with Chaos Eater. In that instant, Ulthane's hammer crashed down from above, smashing an angel into the ground with thunderous force. Ulthane, unbothered by the intrusion, told Uriel that her quest for justice would have to wait until he and Ward had finished their business. He warned the pigeons to fly away before he started plucking them. An angel attempted to pick up the Black Hammer, but failed, earning only Ulthane's mocking laughter. He offered to help by demonstrating the hammer's true power, easily crushing another angel and advising the rest to duck if they valued their lives. Uriel, bloody but unbowed, blocked War's path and swore vengeance for Abaddon's death. War engaged her in brutal combat, ultimately overpowering and knocking her unconscious. As her battered Hellguard carried her away, Ulthane clapped, declaring that perhaps War truly was who he claimed to be, though the Maker himself remained unconvinced. Driving his hammer into the ground, Ulthane finally addressed War's purpose. War once again asked about the Griever's lair. Ulthane indicated the gate, explaining he had sealed it up to keep the Griever's monstrous pets from overrunning his home. War stated again that he was who he claimed to be, and Ulthane, as he opened the gate, told War that if he could slay the Griever and return alive, he might finally earn his respect. As War stepped through the gateway, Ulthane called for him to leave, telling the horseman to get off his property before more pigeons came to crap in his yard. Inside the abandoned train station, War confronted the Griever, using an angelic weapon to force the beast to flee deeper into the tunnels. The Watcher, unimpressed, told War to make sure he killed her next time. Navigating the labyrinth of the subway system, War acquired the Tremor Gauntlet, an artifact that would serve him well on his journey. War pressed forward, battling an onslaught of demons and monstrous creatures until he reached the heart of the Griever's lair. The colossal beast, enraged, tore into the chamber, and the battle began in earnest. War wielded the Tremor Gauntlet with devastating force, shattering the crystal that protected the Griever's heart. The monster fought back, but War pummeled its legs to a pulp, then finished it by hurling a train car, crushing the Tower Guardian utterly. War then claimed the Griever's heart as his prize. Returning to Ulthane's forge, the Maker was at work when his own hammer flew by, embedded itself in the wall, and Ulthane turned with a smile, greeting War and remarking that he could have knocked. War asked why Ulthane was there. The Maker retorted that War was the one who had broken into his house. War pressed, stating that Ulthane hadn't always been the Black Hammer, that he was in hiding, and demanded to know what role he had to play in the apocalypse. Ulthane shrugged off the accusation, claiming he simply enjoyed the scenery. He tossed War a newly forged weapon, Mercy, the legendary pistol of Strife, War's brother. War, suspicious, pulled Mercy on Ulthane, demanding the truth. Ulthane pressed his forehead to the barrel, unfazed, and asked if he looked like someone who feared death. War hesitated, then lowered the weapon, telling Ulthane that it was not death he needed to fear. With that, War turned and left to seek out Samael, Mercy now holstered at his side. War returned to Samael, the heart of the griever in his possession. Samael greeted him with a sly grin, asking if he had enjoyed plucking pigeons with the black hammer. War, ever observant, remarked that Samael seemed to see a great deal from his prison. Samael replied with dark confidence, saying that once he sets his mind to learn a thing, nothing could remain hidden from him. War shifted the conversation, asking Samael what he knew of Uriel. The demon lord laughed, feigning surprise that War would indulge such a trivial concern. War explained that Uriel believed he was responsible for Abaddon's death. Samael told him that the Helguard's loyalty to Abaddon was absolute, and that Uriel's feelings for her commander went far beyond the professional. She would stop at nothing to avenge him. War told Samael that he fought the demon who killed Abaddon, vowing to punish the true murderer. Samael warned that Straga, the most formidable of the destroyers chosen, drew his power directly from the tower, and would not stray from its shadow. Samael laughed, suggesting that with all the wisdom he had imparted, War might just survive the coming trials. War, eager to press forward, asked who would be his next quarry. Samael spoke of the Stygian, the ancient king of the Ashworms, declaring that the creature grew monstrous in the fertile earth of the wasteland. When War asked why the Ashlands were so fertile, Samael replied with grim satisfaction that the land was thick with the ash of billions, angels, demons, and human alike, all reduced to dust. Samael explained that some demons, blind to the true nature of the Stygian, had been capturing lesser worms and creatures, forcing them to fight in a twisted arena. He confided that the demons believed they could tame the Stygian, ignorant of the fact that it was one of the destroyers chosen. War inquired how the demons avoided the wrath of the worms, prompting Samael to ask if he'd ever heard of the chronospheres. War replied that the chronospheres were a gift from the old ones, and that mastery of them granted mastery over time itself. Samael revealed that though the old ones had vanished, demons had managed to harness the chronosphere's magic in diminished form. He imparted to War a basic understanding of their power, enough to aid him in navigating the Ashland's dangers and bypassing the monstrous worms. Samael reminded War that nothing in life was ever certain, save perhaps their word. Setting out for the Ashlands, War invoked his new chronomancer abilities, using the chronospheres to traverse the perilous, worm-infested wasteland. Along the way, he slew countless demons, their bodies left to rot in the ashen dunes. Finally, War reached the infamous arena, only to find the gates closed behind him and hordes of bloodthirsty demons eager to watch the spectacle. With the gong's thunderous toll, the first wave of foes surged forward. War met them head-on, dispatching each challenger with deadly efficiency as he waited his true opponent. After surviving wave after wave, a demon warrior emerged into the ring, mounted atop War's own lost steed, Ruin. The crowd of demons howled as the rider strutted atop the magnificent horse, taunting War and calling him small from above. War, his resolve never shaken, retorted that the demon could look him in the eyes when death came for him. The duel began in earnest. War fought his way onto the arena, delivering a crushing blow that knocked the demon from Ruin's back. Ever the honorable combatant, War kicked the demon's sword back to him, insisting on a fair fight. He quickly stunned the demon, then, without hesitation, drew Chaos Eater and severed the fiend's legs. Pulling his foe close, War drove his sword through the demon's chest, staring into his eyes as he fulfilled his promise. In the aftermath, Ruin, wild and untamed after a century apart, charged at War, knocking him to the ground. The Watcher, seeing the beast's madness, urged War to end the horse's life. War, steadfast, drove his sword into the earth and declared that he would not fight his faithful companion. The Watcher called him a fool, threatening him again, but War only replied half-jesting, "Or you'll kill me? I'll take my chances." Ruin charged again, but this time the horse recognized his master's spirit, passing through War without harm. The two quickly rekindled their bond, and as War mounted Ruin, the crowd of demons flew into a frenzy. The Watcher, ever the cynic, mocked the spectacle, asking if the demons were not entertained. Riding Ruin, War tore through the demonic ranks, breaking free from the arena. Soon, he found himself trapped with one of the monstrous ashworms. Using Ruin's speed and the power of mercy, War wounded the beast. Then, in a breathtaking maneuver, he charged Ruin straight into the worm's gaping maw as it dived into ground. Moments later, a fountain of blood erupted from the earth, and War emerged atop Ruin, ready to press on. Without pause, War pressed onward, seeking out the Stygian, the true king of the worms and the third of the destroyers chosen. He approached a crowd of demons, struggling to tame the colossal beast, cutting them down one by one. As War watched, the Stygian broke free of its chains, turning upon his tormentors and slaughtering them in a frenzy. Locking eyes with the monstrous worm, War mounted Ruin and charged into battle. He battered the creature before leaping into the Stygian's gaping jaws as it burrowed deep. Blood erupted from its maw as War tore it apart from within. Emerging victorious with the Stygian's heart in hand, without rest, War turned his steed and galloped back towards Samael, his prize secured. Back at Samael's prison, the Demon Lord wasted no time feasting on the heart War had brought him, his monstrous appetite on full display as War stood by, his patience as ironclad as ever. Samael, savoring his victory, told War that only one heart remained before he could grant him passage into the tower. The demon revealed that the final chosen was none other than Silitha, one of the Spider Lords from the Abyss and Yilisic, who made her lair across the yawning chasm to the north of the Ashlands. Samael remarked that even though Ruin was still recovering, the mighty horse should be able to carry War across the perilous divide. He warned that as soon as War arrived, Silitha would find him, both of lives and secrets. Most who fell into her web became nothing more than a meal, but those she favored were kept alive, prisoners forced to share their stories for her amusement. Samael explained that Silitha cherished tales, and War, with his reputation, was sure to attract her attention. War, ever direct, asked what the Spider Lord might reveal about Samael. The demon's eyes flashed with a warning, reminding War that sometimes the hero dies in the end. Regaining his composure, Samael added that he preferred stories with happy ending, and urged War to bring him Silitha's heart. With the demon's words still echoing in his mind, War mounted Ruin and rode to the edge of the great chasm. War and his steed crossed the abyss, only to be met by a sudden ambush. Swarms of Silitha's spawn descend upon him. Overwhelmed, War was knocked unconscious, only to awaken ensnared in a cocoon of webs deep within the iron canopy, the air thick with the skittering of countless legs. Summoning his indomitable will, War broke free of his bonds, his every movement slicing through sticky silk and shadow. He began his journey through the iron canopy, fighting through hordes of monstrous spiders and bizarre new foes, slashing and smashing his way towards his quarry. Along the way, he discovered the Abyssal Chain, a weaponized gauntlet that would prove indispensable in his battle against Silitha's guardians. Using the Abyssal Chain, War fought his way to the seal bearing the path to the Broodmother. The battle was brutal. Lesser guardians fell one after another until War faced the queen herself, the Broodmother, her carapace glistening with blue crystal. Combining the power of the Abyssal Chain and the Tremor Gauntlet, War shattered her armored shell, then tore open her abdomen, ending the monstrous spider's reign. With the seal broken, War entered Silitha's lair, her disembodied voice echoing through the darkness. Silitha, sly and ancient, greeted him, saying she was honored by his presence, having heard so many stories whispered of the Red Rider. Disturbed by the fate of her fellow chosen, Silitha asked if War had come for her heart as well. She pressed him, wanting to know if Samael had explained the truth, that it was his blood, Samael's own cursed power, that beat within the hearts of the chosen, and that their sole purpose was to ensure Samael could never reclaim his full might. Silitha warned War that if he gave her heart to Samael, he would unleash a demon far more powerful than all four chosen combined. War, unfazed, told her he had no interest in her stories. Silitha, now angered, promised her children would dance to his screams. Thus began a fierce and desperate battle. War used the Abyssal Chain to wrench Silitha from the ceiling, sending both of them plummeting through multiple levels. At last, Silitha was impaled on jagged rocks at the bottom. War leapt onto her chest and with a savage motion, tore out her heart. With his grisly prize in hand, War made his way back to Samael, ready for the next phase of his relentless quest. Upon War's return to Samael's prison, he found the powerful Demon Lord pacing impatiently, his hunger for his power nearly tangible. Samael admitted he had begun to wonder if War would deliver on his promise, and demanded the heart that he was owed. War, standing tall and unyielding, hesitated for a moment, confronting Samael with the truth. The demon had lied about the Chosen, and their true purpose. Samael dismissed the accusation, insisting that it no longer mattered. He had promised War access to the tower, and that promise would be honored. With a grim gesture, War tossed Silitha's heart to Samael. The demon seized it greedily, consuming it in one savage motion. Instantly, Samael's body exploded with raw, unbridled power, his form momentarily transcendent as he taunted War, asking if it amused him to deny Samael his rightful strength. With his power now restored to its zenith, Samael declared himself as mighty as a god, boasting that he could slay War and suck the very marrow from his bones. Yet, just as quickly, Samael mastered his rage. explaining that even he lived by a code. Opening a portal for the Horsemen, Samael looked War in the eye and acknowledged that whatever he might say about balance and cosmic law, he could recognize a quest for revenge when he saw one, and he respected that above all else. Samael confided that his true reason for dissent among the demons was his disdain for the company kept by his so-called master. War pressed Samael, asking why he would never side with the Destroyer. Samael refused to answer directly, telling War to continue along his path and assuring him that in time all would become clear. As War and the Watcher stepped toward the swirling portal, the Watcher noted that he could lead anywhere. War strode forward, undeterred, and Samael's voice echoed behind him, promising that their paths would cross again. The portal deposited War at the foot of the Destroyer's tower, the Black Throne. As he entered the central chamber, he found Azrael, the Angel of Death, suspended in the air. Panic etched across his face. Azrael, seeing War, lamented that the seventh seal had never been broken. War challenged the angel, asking why he should fear the Horsemen. Azrael replied if War would not kill him, he might as well help him. War, ever practical, demanded to know what was required of him. Azrael explained that the tower must be cut off from the Well of Souls, as the Destroyer drew his strength from it. War asked if he spoke truly of the Well of Souls, and Azrael confirmed that the River of Souls had been corrupted, fueling the Destroyer and his legions. War, recalling Azrael's sacred duty, realizes that only the Watcher of the Well could have allowed such a thing. Azrael confessed that he had been attacked by the Destroyer's Chosen, and fared no better against them than War had done against Straga a century ago. At the mention of Straga, War's anger flared, and he demanded that Azrael take him to the demon. Azrael agreed, but only if War helped him first. Azrael instructed War to release the trapped souls from 3 separate wings of the tower and return them to him. Setting off, War uncovered the Voidwalker, an artifact that would enable him to traverse the tower's many perils. In the first wing, War confronted an abyssal gladiator, battling the monstrous foe and ultimately using its own chain to defeat it and free the imprisoned souls. When he returned, Azrael expressed surprise that War had become his savior, urging him to hurry before Straga learned of their actions. War pondered Azrael's earlier words about the seventh seal, recalling that Abaddon had made a similar claim before his death. Azrael, shame weighing him down, opened a new path for War to proceed to the next chamber. Venturing onward, War faced the second abyssal gladiator, a stone colossus, and defeated it, releasing more souls to Azrael. When War returned, Azrael confessed that the universe itself was sick, and that the Charred Council refused to acknowledge the truth. Someone, he said, had to act. Azrael recounted warning Abaddon that attacking the demons would breach the ancient treaty and bring catastrophe. Abaddon, frustrated, argued that evil spread unchecked while heaven stood idle, and the Council's pact remained in the hands of those unwilling to act. Azrael reminded him that the Council spoke for the Creator, and questioned if Abaddon presumed to know better. Abaddon replied that he did. The Archangel explained that once the seals were broken, the demons would attack, and with all their leaders gathered, heaven could destroy them. Azrael objected, reminding Abaddon that humanity was not ready for the apocalypse, and that Earth would be destroyed in the crossfire. Abaddon insisted that heaven would win before any true harm was done, but Azrael warned that even victory would bring the Council's wrath. Abaddon claimed the seals would be reforged to erase the evidence, making it appear that the demons had broken the pact, and that heaven was only exacting justice for their treachery. Azrael turned to Ulthane, the mighty maker, asking for his help. Ulthane, reluctant but loyal, handed the Angel of Death the Armageddon Blade. Azrael spoke the ancient Enochian words, breaking the seals, save for the seventh, which Abaddon protected personally. War asked Azrael if he was certain. Azrael replied that he was, and explained that they had not wanted to involve the Horsemen unless it was absolutely necessary. War, enraged, declared that he'd paid the price for their treachery as the Watcher pressed him to begin his retribution with Azrael. War refused, stating that Azrael's confession absolved him of the Council's orders. The Watcher began to torture War, reminding him that the Council could end his existence at any time, since they had made the Horsemen what they were. The Watcher declared that War's service would end only with the destruction of the Destroyer, and reminded him of his oath to restore balance. For now, Azrael could live, the Watcher said. But the moment he became useless, War was to kill him. Azrael opened the final passage, and War set out to defeat the last abyssal gladiator, and return the souls to the Angel of Death. Once complete, Azrael kept his promise, opening the path leading to Straga as War had demanded. The Watcher, ever distrustful, noted that Azrael was no longer useful. but Azrael reminded War that they could not escape the tower without his powers. He explained that Straga and the tower were now one, and if they slew the demon, they would need Azrael's aid to flee. War agreed that his task was not yet finished, and the Watcher warned Azrael to pray the horsemen did not return. War marched into the heart of the tower to face Straga. The demon mocked War's newfound strength, boasting that he remained the Destroyer's mightiest chosen. War replied that Straga was the last of his kind, and that the Destroyer had chosen poorly. Straga laughed, promising to savor the horseman's death once more. The battle was titanic. War stabbed Straga in the head, but the demon hurled him away. Summoning the Voidwalker, War created a portal in Straga's mouth and another in the floor. Then he leapt through, teleported inside the demon's skull, and with a mighty slash, split Straga's head apart from within. The Colossus collapsed, finally dead. Azrael appeared, commending War on his victory. With Straga destroyed, Azrael kept his word, using his angelic power to sever the tower's connection to the Well of Souls. As the structure began to collapse, Azrael transformed the link into a portal, commanding War to leap inside. War obeyed, vanishing through the swirling gateway as the tower crumbled behind him. War emerged to the sound of Azrael's voice, the angel of death recounting a tale of regret. He explained that after Abaddon's supposed fall, the archangel had come to him, seeking counsel. Azrael admitted that seeing Abaddon alive had rekindled his old faith in his friend, but now, in retrospect, he knew he had been a fool to trust him. Azrael revealed that he had brought Abaddon to the place they now stood, Eden itself. The Watcher, incredulous, demanded to know how this was possible, since Eden had been ordered destroyed. Azrael, anger flashing in his eyes, recounted how he had been present when mankind was cast out, witnessing the land's descent into ruin and bloodshed. He confessed that he could not bear to let the Creator's first gift and greatest weapon fall into darkness, and so he had sealed Eden away, hiding it from the rest of creation. War's gaze fell upon the legendary Tree of Knowledge. He asked Azrael if he had brought Abaddon to the tree. Azrael, voice heavy with portent, told War that he too must seek the tree, for it alone could reveal a way to stop the Destroyer. Azrael admitted he had never used the tree himself, but sometimes wished he had, wondering if his own path might have been different had he done so. War pressed him, asking what gift the tree had bestowed. Azrael replied that it was not his place to know. Each who sought the tree received something different. Some received nothing, others went mad, still others were destroyed. The angel of death beckoned War to follow, and together they approached a broken bridge. Azrael explained that only those truly worthy could cross, or, War joked, those with wings. Azrael grew somber as he told War the years of battling darkness had left a stain on his soul, and that there in Eden he was regarded as something worse than a demon. He asked War if he was prepared to confront his own darkness, then handed him the Mask of Shadows, explaining that it would allow War to see into the Shadow Realm. He wished War luck, for the challenge ahead would be his alone. Steeling himself, War donned the Mask of Shadows and faced a manifestation of his own inner darkness. After a harrowing battle, War defeated the Shadow, proving himself worthy to enter Eden. Azrael greeted him at the entrance, telling War that the Tree of Knowledge awaited and that he would stand guard with the Watcher until War returned. The Watcher insisted that War would go nowhere without him, but Azrael challenged the Watcher to try crossing the bridge himself, warning that his tainted soul would never make it. The Watcher stung, unleashed a wave of torment, torturing War and reminding him of who held the leash. Undeterred, War stepped into the Tree of Knowledge, only to be assaulted by a torrent of visions. He heard Lilith's voice, seductively asking whether one would prefer to serve in heaven or rule in hell. Next, War saw Abaddon speaking to Uriel, telling her that he would soon need her by his side for the coming war. Uriel proclaimed that she would follow him even into hell. The vision shifted to the battle on Earth and Abaddon's death, then plunged War into darkness. Abaddon, in despair, wondered how the demons had learned of his plan. Lilith appeared, laughing, and confessed that she had uncovered his plot to call the demons early to Earth, leveraging it to ready Hell's armies for the assault. Abaddon, broken, dropped his sword as Lilith tempted him to become her loyal servant, the Destroyer. He refused, but Lilith pressed her advantage, reminding him that once the throne of the White City learned of his betrayal, he would be dragged before the council and damned. Again, she asked if he would serve in heaven or rule in hell. At last, Abaddon agreed to the latter, accepting demonic power and transforming into the dragon, the Destroyer. Lilith instructed Abaddon to find Azrael and persuade him to bring him to the tree, so that together they could change the fate of the universe. War's vision continued, showing the council learning of Abaddon's plan to deceive them and start a premature war. Enraged at his defiance, the council debated their response, noting that they had no proof, the seals remained intact, and that Abaddon must have had help. One of the council insisted Abaddon's defiance could not go unpunished, fearing it would weaken their own authority and hasten their own downfall. Another suggested that the Four Horsemen could stop Abaddon if they had a reason. A third argued that without evidence, the Horsemen would see no justice in killing him. It would be murder. The council decided they would send one who would act on vengeance alone, and so they faked the call to Earth that War answered, setting in motion the current events of War's journey. The vision then shifted again, showing the destroyer clutching the seventh seal, boasting that the Armageddon Blade had been shattered and that heaven and earth now belonged to him. Uriel and her remaining Hell Guard attacked the destroyer in a final doomed assault. War saw the Watcher laughing, mocking him for not realizing the journey was a one-way ticket. As War reached for the final seal, the Armageddon Blade suddenly pierced his chest and he fell. In a blinding flash, he saw himself drawing the Armageddon Blade from the Tree of Knowledge and watched it shatter before his eyes. War awoke from the vision to find him clutching the handle of the Armageddon Blade. He returned to Azrael and the Watcher, who immediately asked what he had learned. War revealed that Abaddon was the destroyer, shocking the Watcher, but explained that Abaddon was merely a pawn in a much larger game. Azrael requested that War bring his old friend peace, but the Watcher interjected, insisting that only death could atone for Abaddon's betrayal. Azrael resigned, asked if War had found a way to defeat the destroyer. War recounted his vision of a sword capable of breaking the seals. Azrael explained that the Armageddon Blade had been ordered destroyed by Abaddon after the seals were broken, and that it was now lost. War, holding up the handle, declared that it would be reforged. The Watcher pressed him for more details, and War told him that Abaddon possessed the final seal and intended to attack heaven, that Uriel would die leading the Hell Guard against him, and that was all he had seen. With little time to spare, Azrael began weaving a portal, warning that once it was closed, both Eden and the Tree of Knowledge would be lost forever. The three stepped through the gateway, returning to the shattered ruins of Earth. After their escape from Eden, War and Azrael found themselves on the outskirts of the Ashlands. Azrael, his voice heavy with the weight of ages, instructed War to seek out Ulthane, for only the Maker could reforge the weapon needed to end the coming darkness. Azrael explained that the Armageddon Blade, now shattered, must be restored if War wished to have any hope of victory. He gave War the Mask of Shadows, a relic of unimaginable power, instructing him to use its mystical sight to find the scattered fragments of the blade hidden across the desolate earth. War was told to return each recovered piece to Ulthane, and once the mighty smith had completed his work, to bring the reforged Armageddon Blade back to Azrael for one final act before the end. Before departing, War turned to the Angel of Death and demanded answers. He wanted to know why Azrael had not simply let him die in the tower or left him to his fate back in Eden. He warned Azrael that the council would ultimately demand his death and that he intended to slay Abaddon and all who had conspired with him. Azrael replied with solemn acceptance. All must face judgment for their sins, and when his own reckoning came, he would face it without fear. Yet for now, he urged War to hurry and to tell Ulthane that he was the last hope for an old fool. As War scoured the ruined world for the shattered pieces of the Armageddon Blade, he was confronted upon the dry road by Uriel, the Hell Guard's commander. She appeared alone, driving her sword into the earth and challenging War to next sacramentum, the most sacred and ancient of the Creator's laws. War called her a fool, but Uriel pressed on, declaring she claimed his life before the Creator and daring him to dishonor the ancient rite. War, refusing to dishonor the law, drove his sword into the ground and knelt before her, asking her why she pursued this path. Uriel revealed that Abaddon had once spoken of War as the most honorable of the Four Horsemen, but insisted War must die to atone for what had happened to her beloved leader. War accepted the challenge, reminding Uriel that the sacrament was not complete until one of them fell. They engaged in a fierce duel, steel clashing in a storm of sparks and fury. War quickly gained the upper hand, knocking Uriel aside and slamming her into a wall. The Watcher emerged, taunting War and urging him to finish Uriel, but War, resolute, turned away, declaring that next sacramentum was his to fulfill, and that he alone would decide when her death would come, not the Watcher. Uriel, furious at being spared, reminded War of their oath. War told her the truth that Abaddon was in reality the destroyer. Uriel accused War of lying, unable to accept that she had pledged her loyalty to a traitor. War explained that Abaddon had been deceived by his own weakness and had willingly become the destroyer. He told Uriel that the Tree of Knowledge had revealed all to him, and that he only wished to share with her the truth. Reminding her again of the death oath, War walked away, leaving Uriel behind, furious and torn by disbelief. At last, War recovered all the fragments of the Armageddon Blade and returned to Ulthane. The Maker gripped the handle, declaring that this was his greatest work. War, stoic as ever, replied that it was, until now. Ulthane set to work, the forge singing as he hammered the blade anew, sparks flying and ancient magic and craftsmanship combined to restore the weapon. While Ulthane worked, Azrael waited patiently, hoping for the horseman's swift return, while Uriel, shaken by War's revelations, pondered her next move. As the final blow was struck and the Armageddon Blade was completed, Ulthane presented the weapon to War. Meanwhile, Uriel gathered her Hellguard, rallying them for the final assault against the destroyer. The Hellguard charged forward, but the destroyer proved too powerful, decimating Uriel's angels with ruthless ease. War arrived at Azrael's side, the newly reforged Armageddon Blade gleaming in his grasp. Azrael confirmed that War's warnings had come true. The Hellguard had fallen before Abaddon's might. War, undeterred, asked Azrael for his aid one last time. The Angel of Death, honoring his word, sent War hurtling towards War to join the battle to face the destroyer alongside what remained of the Hellguard. War plunged into the heart of battle, the Armageddon Blade blazing in his grasp, its power unmistakable even amidst the chaos. The clash of angels and demons parted before him, their ancient animosity momentarily forgotten as the Red Rider advanced toward the destroyer. War's arrival was perfectly timed. He found the monstrous overlord standing over Uriel, whom he had just bested in combat. The destroyer, his voice echoing with bitterness and regret, told War that Uriel had mistaken him for the angel he once was. He remembered the love he and Uriel once shared, lamenting how before his transformation, he had chosen duty above all else and paid for it with his life. With venom in his words, the destroyer declared that both heaven and hell despised War, and he demanded to know whether War would choose to serve in heaven or rule in hell. War, unflinching, drew the Armageddon Blade and replied with cold certainty, "I choose what a coward could not." Infuriated, Abaddon hurled Uriel aside, casting her away. The final duel commenced. War, mounted on Ruin, launched himself at the destroyer. The former archangel spread his wings and soared upward, War clinging fiercely to his back. In the battle above, War drove the Armageddon Blade deep into Abaddon's flesh, forcing the monster to shed his draconic form. The two crashed through the tower, plummeting to a lower level, where War now confronted Abaddon's true self, a fallen, corrupted angel, twisted by his own ambitions. The two warriors clashed, swords ringing as they exchanged brutal blows. In the end, War's might prevailed. He pinned Abaddon to the ground, pressing him down with the weight of his blade. War spoke, his voice cold and final, telling Abaddon that he had taught him the most important lesson, that sometimes one must set duty aside and do what must be done. With that, War ripped the angel's wings from his back, rendering him forever earthbound. He raised the Armageddon Blade ready to deliver justice. At that moment, Uriel arrived, and Abaddon, desperate, pleaded for her intervention. Uriel, her heart hardened by betrayal, called him a traitor and watched him moved, as War drove the blade into Abaddon's heart. The corrupt angel fell, the seventh seal slipping from his grasp. War stooped to retrieve it, but before he could, the Watcher materialized and ensnared him, forcing War to drop the seal. The Watcher gloated, told War that this was a one-way ticket, and that the Council had orchestrated the entire ordeal, knowing War's sense of honor would make him the perfect scapegoat for the apocalypse. They knew he would never willingly carry out an execution unless his own honor was on the line, so they let him take the fall, confident he would seek revenge. Uriel tried to intervene, but the Watcher blasted her aside, warning her to wait her own turn. War, straining against his bonds, tried to reach for the seventh seal, but the Watcher snatched it up, mocking War for coming so close to freedom, only to fail in the last moment. War, undaunted, began to laugh, the Watcher taken back, demanding to know why War would find humor at his own funeral. War replied, his gaze steely, "I'm not laughing at my funeral, I'm laughing at yours." At that cue, Uriel, seizing her chance, drove the Armageddon Blade into War's chest, fulfilling the ancient next sacrament. War fell, but the sacrificial blow broke the Watcher's hold, and Uriel, with a single mighty swing, shattered the final seal in the Watcher's palm, causing his arm to explode in a burst of power. The Watcher, howling in rage and disbelief, demanded to know what she had done. As he tried to gather the fragments of the shattered seal, its unleashed power surged into War's body, restoring his life. Revived, War rose as the Watcher panicked, blasted Uriel away, and threatened to kill her. War seized the Watcher's arm before he could strike, and the Watcher, cackling, vowed to slay War again. War slammed the Watcher to the ground, and as the Watcher begged for his life, War continued to pummel him, the Watcher pleading, "Are you going to fight everyone now? Even the Council? You'll never get away." The Watcher reminded War not to forget the leash, but War lifted him by the head, crushed his skull, coldly declaring, "I haven't." Uriel approached War, telling War she believed he must have foreseen these events, and that it was the reason he spared her life. War replied that he simply did not want the last scrap of heaven's honor to die with her. Uriel said that now they were even, but warned her that if he ordered, she would face him in battle once more. As War turned to leave, she called after him, warning that the Council, the White City, and countless others would now hunt him, and demanded to know if he intended to face all of them alone. War turned, raising the shattered seal, and replied with unshakable resolve,
"No. Not alone."
At that moment, in the distance, the newly revived Death and Strife, including their sister Fury, was summoned to Earth, ready to stand by their brother's side for the final battle, the last stand for all creation. As one of the legendary Nephilim and a true horseman of the apocalypse, War is the living embodiment of power unleashed. Among his siblings, he is renowned as the mightiest in raw physical strength, challenged only by Death himself. His strength eclipses that of nearly any demon or angel. War's blows can shatter stone and topple even the most towering foes. He is a force that thrives in the maelstrom, preferring to meet every adversary with the overwhelming tide of brute power, a ferocity so unmatched that he once overpowered Abaddon, even in the Archangel's monstrous destroyer form, in a direct contest of might. Yet War's resilience is as legendary as his strength. His body is a fortress, so durable that he often stands his ground without flinching, enduring the attacks of enemies who would send lesser beings to their graves. But do not mistake his size for sluggishness. War is a tempest, lightning quick and agile, able to close the distance with terrifying speed. His prowess with the sword is virtually unmatched, every slash, parry, and thrust honed by centuries of battle, making him one of the greatest swordsmen creation has ever seen. While War is master of martial combat and prefers the honest clash of steel and the trickery of sorcery, he's no stranger to magic. He can wield wrath magic with formidable skill, though he uses it sparingly, covering his body in a blazing aura of fire, sheathing his flesh in an impenetrable coating of ash, and with a single plunge of his blade into the earth, causing the ground to erupt in jagged blades. War can even summon serpentine creatures of searing energy, each one a living weapon that devastates his foes. At the heart of War's arsenal is Chaos Eater, a titanic sword whose name is legend. This blade does not merely cut, it feasts on the very chaos of war, absorbing the wild energies of the battlefield. As the conflict rages, Chaos Eater's hunger grows, and War draws upon its power, becoming stronger and swifter with every strike. The sword is his conduit. Without it, the full might of War cannot be unleashed. War's left arm is encased in a gauntlet of enchanted steel, a limb forged by pain and battle. The gauntlet can absorb and store souls, act as a shield against devastating attacks, and channel the energies that War commands in times of need. When the battle demands it, War can unleash his most terrifying transformation, the Chaos form. In this state, War's body is engulfed in living flames, his features twisted into a demonic visage of primal fury. While transformed, War becomes utterly invincible, his strength magnified beyond even his already superhuman limits. No blade can pierce him, no spell can harm him, but this cataclysmic power is fleeting, cursed with limits imposed by the Council, lest even the world itself be sundered by War's rage. By his side, War commands the loyalty of Ruin, his phantom horse. The spectral steed is the perfect companion, matching War's might stride for stride. With Ruin, War can charge into the thickest of battles, leap ravines, or outrun the fastest demonic pursuers. Though Chaos Eater is eventually replaced by the Armageddon Blade, a weapon of even greater power forged for the world's end, War likely never truly parts with his original sword, keeping Chaos Eater as a symbol of his eternal struggle. Yet his arsenal is vast, for War also wields the Vorpal Blade, a whirling weapon that can strike multiple foes, the Tremor Gauntlet, a tool of raw seismic force, and the Reaper's Scythe, echoing the terrible legacy of death. Over the course of his quest, War requires many tools and abilities that set him apart as the Council's greatest enforcer. The Earthcaller, a horn of ancient power, capable of knocking back enemies, or awakening the mighty Stone Wardens from their slumber. Mercy, the legendary handgun of strife, which War claims as his own, channeling death with every shot. the Abyssal Chain, an enchanted gauntlet with the spear-tipped chain, allowing War to pull distant objects to him or hurl himself toward a target in a single, powerful motion. The Voidwalker, an artifact of lost magic, letting War create portals on certain surfaces, bending the battlefield to his will. His wrath powers are many, each one of them opening new avenues of devastation with every victory. With Shadow Flight, War can unfurl wings of pure shadow from his back, gliding over chasms and ravines, traversing terrain that would doom any mortal warrior. The Mask of Shadows, an artifact that grants War the vision to pierce the veil, allowing him to see into the Shadow Realm and interact with hidden objects and paths unseen by mortal eyes. As Chronomancer, War can manipulate the flow of time itself, using chronospheres to slow the world around him, a gift from the Old Ones, a remnant of primordial magic. When the pieces are at last gathered, War dons the Abyssal Armor, a suit of protection so formidable that it renders him almost untouchable, a fortress of steel and willpower forged in the crucible of the Apocalypse. With all these powers, weapons, and relics at his command, War is not merely a horseman, he is the storm at the world's end, the balance's final arbiter, and the living proof that even in the heart of chaos, there is an order that can only be enforced by the might of a true horseman. War's tale is one of titanic might, unbreakable will, and an honor tested by gods, demons, angels, and betrayal itself. From the burning fields of Eden to the ruined streets of earth, he has faced impossible judgments and the schemes of both heaven and hell. He has been the council's sword, a scapegoat for the apocalypse, and the lone voice demanding true justice, regardless of the cost. Through the agony of sacrifice and the crucible of conspiracy, War shattered the chains of manipulation, reclaimed his legacy, and stood defiant at the precipice of annihilation. In the hour of reckoning, he chose not vengeance or power, but brotherhood, balance, and the hope that what was broken might be reforged anew. But even as War's legend echoes across the apocalypse, the foundation of all things lies deeper still. In the next chapter of Darksiders lore, we will journey back to the primordial architects, the Old Ones. Who were these ancient makers? What secrets did they forge? And how did their vanished power shape the destinies of angels, demons, and the horsemen themselves? Join me, Vigil from Video Game Lore, as we unlock the mysteries buried at the dawn of creation. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to ride with me into the next epic legend. The storm is not over. This is only the beginning.